I started my very first business when I was 20. I was actually a professional dancer. So I used to teach, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of bachata. It's a sensual partner dance from the Dominican Republic. I started two of the largest bachata Latin dance festivals in the West Coast. We had like over 2,000 people every 6 months. Coaching has always been something that I love doing. I love making an impact in other people's lives and teaching them, just everything I've learned from my mentors as well. So, and it was one of those things where like the fish doesn't know that it's in the water. So I thought all kids in my school sold drugs. I didn't know that it was just me.
You're like, What's going on, guys, and welcome to today's episode. So I am with, dude, I feel like I've met you before. I swear to God, which is kind of,
did.
Yeah, it's just so trippy because you're in Orange County, and like, is your Belinda OC?
Yeah, it's OC.
It still is? Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. So you're still part of the OC bubble. But we got Jorge, man. I appreciate you for hopping on here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I think it's going to be super interesting. So I know you're a massive guru in real estate, specifically Airbnb. That's kind of where you found most of your success. I like to ask, I like to dive into the dark side of things before we start into the light. Because I feel like social media, you got a lot of people who talk about their wins, and not enough of people who sit there and discuss their losses.
Yeah.
And I like to give people a more transparent vibe. So, how old are you now? Let's start there.
36.
36. How long have you been doing this for?
Real estate since 2012.
2012. And tell me about your background, your career before you got into that.
Yeah, I started my very first business when I was 20. I was actually a professional dancer. So I used to teach, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of bachata. It's a sensual partner dance from the Dominican Republic.
I'm sorry, bro. I thought you were going to say that you're a male stripper or something.
It's as close as possible. It's as close as possible. So a lot of people that dance salsa, dance bachata, it's just sensual. The tempo's a little slower.
Dude, it's so tough.
And so I quit my job at B of A. That was my last job, and dropped out of Cypress College, which is near Stanton. And I went all in on this dream of becoming a professional dancer, started a dance company, started a nightclub. I started two of the largest bachata Latin dance festivals in the West Coast. We had like over 2,000 people every 6 months. For about 10 years, we would sell out the hotels along the LAX Strip. And did that for 10 years, traveled to 25 countries, teaching, performing, created a pretty big personal brand, had like over 5 million views before 2010 on YouTube. It was pretty crazy.
Nice.
And then I started buying real estate with that money until I no longer needed that business. I always referred to that business as my job. That was my rat race. In 2017, I let go of all the dance stuff and just went all in on Airbnb.
In 2017?
2017.
Oh, this is still new.
Yeah.
It's not even that old. So you're talking
So
like
who
6
introduced
years.
you to Airbnb and just that arbitrage?
Yeah. So I had a student. Her name's Nicole. She was my dance student, and she had a couple units in Fresno, and she was telling me how she was making 3.5 times more with her short-term rentals compared to what she was making from her long-term. And I had at this time a single-family home that I had bought in 2012, and I was renting out all the rooms, which would cover the entire mortgage payment, all the utilities. And some of these leases were ending at the beginning of 2017, so I decided to basically go all in on short-term rentals. I had also just bought 2 additional properties. So I launched 4 units in March of 2017. And these are properties where I should have been making about $1,500 with long-term, and I started making $3,500 with each one. Mm-hmm. So now I was making like 6 figures of profit, and I was able to let go of my dance business so I could just focus all in on real estate.
So because you had the experience from both, the long-term rentals, but then also the short-term rentals, are you a fan of the stress that comes with the short-term rentals, or would you at some point just hang up the the apron, I guess, just hang up the apron and just be like, you know what, I'm going to go find some long-term clients, and we're going to go away from Airbnb now?
Vivi, what makes you believe there's stress with short-term rentals?
Because
isn't there stress in everything?
No, absolutely.
Hear him out.
But the thing is, you got to pick your battles, right? And sometimes the battle you're going into before you do. We pretty much have a lot of experience in short-term car rentals, right? So it's pretty much a very, very similar structure where you have an asset and you have the option to rent it out short-term. Now, what comes with that is a lot of, I'm not going to say inevitables, but a lot of uncontrollables, right?
Yeah.
And then, we pretty much phased out of that whole business just because I wouldn't even say the stress aspect, but it's just the losses.
Yeah, for sure. So my property manager that lives in Stanton, so he handles the entire portfolio. Man, without exaggerating, I probably spend about 1 hour a week, mainly on pricing strategies. That's what I monitor, and like new acquisitions. And that's it. He handles like everything else. So I don't deal with anything. In fact, when I see him every couple weeks for lunch, dinner, or he'll come by my house, he'll be like, oh yeah, there's this crazy situation that happened. But I won't hear about it until weeks pass. So when things come up, he just handles it. So
Yeah.
for me, it's a very stress-free business because I have, a property manager that handles everything. There is challenges, of course, with like regulations. I would say that's like the biggest challenge because anything could change in a city, or if you're operating somewhere where there is no regulation, then they implement one and now you can no longer operate. But other than that, I do appreciate the additional cash flow. And I know you guys had a Carlton last week. When you do short-term rentals, you can do cost segregation. And that just means that you can offset other active incomes from other businesses and pay zero on your federal tax return. So
is that all you do, or do you got other things going on?
one of my biggest focus that I focus on is my coaching business.
Okay.
So I have an Airbnb education company that I started in 2018. We've had over 3,000 students, have 20 plus team members from operations, sales, marketing, the whole nine. Basically everything that Carlton does, but on the real estate side. And so I spend most of my time there. That's right, why I create a lot of social media content,
Maybe
YouTube
I've seen
channel.
your ads or something.
Yeah, we've invested
Maybe
a
we've
lot
seen each
in
other's ads or something.
A lot.
Because I'm like, I've seen them before, so I
So
just can't remember.
got the
where.
short-term rentals, the coaching business, and then we recently started buying apartment buildings.
Nice. Congratulations. You were telling me a moment
Yeah,
ago that you
appreciate that.
just closed your first deal on a 10 unit.
Yep.
That's awesome, man. Tell us about that. How was that process?
Yeah, absolutely. So we decided to start buying apartment buildings. I always like to challenge myself. That's one of the things I love about entrepreneurship, not just the money you make, but like who you become in the process. So I love that challenge and like feeling like a baby, like I'm learning something brand new. It keeps it exciting. I thrive on variety. That's one of my, the 6 human needs that Tony Robbins talks about. So variety is one for me. I want to always be trying new things and challenge myself. And so we're doing what you call syndication. All it is that we release equity to investors in exchange for capital, and now we could take down more deals. And so Carlton, myself, and a few other partners and a bunch of his mastermind students, we took down this multi-million-dollar 10-unit apartment building adjacent to Koreatown in a really nice area. So we're looking
So
at
like,
more.
say if like I'm one of those students, right? One of Carlton's students, right? Part of that mastermind, and I had about 10,000, not even 10,000. Let's make it a little bit more realistic or juicy, I guess. I had about 100,
Sure.
right? What sort of like percentage am I, or like ROI
Yeah.
am I?
Would
Son-
100K even let you in the door?
Yeah, we do a 25K minimum.
definitely would.
This is our 4th deal of like raising capital. We started with a couple developments where we're like tearing down the properties and then building new high-end multifamily. So we're building a 3, a 5, and a 6, all syndication models. And we've learned a lot of people will often just start with 25 to kind of just see how it goes and test the waters. And then once they see that it works, then they're like, here's 100, here's 200. So we do 25K as a minimum to just welcome more investors. And a few of the last recent deals are a 1.5 equity multiple. All that means is that if you invest 100K, you get 150K back. If you invest 50, you get 75K back.
So
Projected returns.
Projected,
Yeah, I'm a bit curious on something because, like, like every business model requires a certain entrepreneur, which I'm sure you see the difference in your coaching model versus your Airbnb model.
Say that again.
Every model requires a certain type of entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure you see the difference, like from your coaching model versus your Airbnb model.
Yeah.
Because I ran like a coaching agency for like 3-4 years. I'm a bit curious, like, what kind of like entrepreneur would you recommend, like, to be successful in Airbnb? And I say that because, like, I've seen a lot of people who, they sell courses online, do really well,
Sure.
but then they go try to build a different business, they suck at it.
Yeah.
And like you see that like across the board with a lot of different people. So like, what are certain traits and qualities that you have to kind of win in that business?
I think the biggest thing is you have to be a really good operator because we're living in the social proof economy. And especially with Airbnb, if you get a couple of 3 or 4-star reviews, they'll suspend your entire portfolio under the same, profile for like 5 days. And then the next time it's going to be 10 days. And if it happens again, they might just ban your account.
Even a 4-star?
Yeah, like if you consistently, well, not 4-star. I meant to say 1-star. If you get a couple of 1-star reviews, not 4-star. If you get a couple of 1-star where people are just saying it was a really bad experience, obviously, if I owned Airbnb, I would want to promote the super hosts, the people who are creating the best experiences. So you have to be a really good operator. You have to be super diligent and detailed, perfectionist mindset. Either you are the operator or someone like myself as a visionary. I surround myself with really strong operators and integrators. So my best friend, he's a really strong operator and integrator, and that's why he's managing the portfolio and not me.
Yeah, so I mean, funny enough, even going back to the conversation we were talking about earlier with like, high risk or low risk or whatever, being a strong operator isn't just a positive in, the fact that you're going to have those good reviews and you're going to be promoted as a super host. But that's what's all like being a strong operator is also what's going to lower your risks overall in the business. Just because, like you said, you are super diligent. You do get, a little bit tight about every single detail. The people coming in, the people coming out. You don't let anything slide. So that is definitely a huge component.
What's bring me to like I'm gonna go back to my first initial point. Bring me to like a super dark time in your life.
Sure.
In your career. And how'd you get out of it?
In my career?
Yeah. Like where you felt like, oh my God, like how did I get here? Am I ever going to get out?
Yeah, a lot of the dark times, I wouldn't say were like in business. They were just like in my upbringing, right? So when I was 5 years old, I attended my very first funeral for one of my half brothers who was murdered due to gang violence. By the time I was 7, I was selling drugs with my dad. So he would say, hey, mijo, we're going to go to McDonald's and get you a Happy Meal. And we would go to McDonald's. But before going to McDonald's, we would go to these industrial buildings and we would basically sell, cocaine. So he would be like, oh, like, go give this to the guy and then shake my hand real quick. And I would do, kind of like just like a little swap of the money. And it was just normal. And it was one of those things where like the fish doesn't know that it's in the water. So I thought all kids in my school sold drugs. I didn't know that it was just me.
You were like,
I did.
I got a question. How often were you going to McDonald's?
Like almost every day.
I mean, in reality, who got the Happy Meal?
His dad was probably like, this is a good ROI, man. It's like, got a $2 burger.
Yeah, not only that, but in Mexico, it's really common for people to have little businesses out of their house. So if I go to Mexico and visit my family, a lot of them sell like chips and sodas and like donuts, like just snacks. It's just normal to make like extra cash. But here, I was born and raised in Santa Ana and grew up all over Orange County. But in Santa Ana, some of the hit areas that we grew up in our apartments and the houses that we would rent, customers would come to our house like every day. And me and my siblings, I'm the youngest one, we would be the ones that would sell the drugs. So we kind of had like our own liquor store here, but we were selling cocaine and marijuana. Wow. And it was just normal. That was just part of our life. And then when I was 10, we also used to smuggle people across the border from Tijuana, Mexico. Right. My dad was an alcoholic, in and out of jail my entire life. And then when I turned 12, he passed away from alcohol. And then when I was 13, my mom abandoned me. So her friend, I started living with her friend when I was 13. She said, hey, as long as you go to school, she said, I'll feed you, clothe you, and put a roof over your head. And that's what I did. Kept going to school. Then when I was 16, she said, all right, now you got to look after yourself. So at 16, I get my first job, making minimum wage, basically 100% independent on my own.
What, I'm sure that creates some trauma. Or no, were you kind of like just chilling like
no, it created a lot of trauma.
Yeah, okay, so like what?
He sold drugs as a kid.
Yeah,
no, I don't know, man. I say that because like the way he's talking about it sounds so nonchalant.
That's what I was gonna say.
Adam's like, damn, I wish I did that.
He clearly has told this story many times. So he just spared us the details.
I've done just a lot of personal development, a lot of therapy, but I was like really fucked up for sure.
I was gonna say because like. What qualities do you think came from that trauma that helped you succeed in business? And what qualities do you think could have been your detriment if you didn't control it?
Yeah, I would say, one of the biggest things, right, is when I was in that, like, that was the darkest phase of my life, is I was like a victim to all those experiences. So all those experiences had power over me, right? And so I feel like anytime a person says, oh, in order for my life to get better, I need... I don't know, the president to change, the education. Anytime you need an external force in order for your life to get better, then like you're operating from a place of victim, right? And that was me. I was like, man, my life sucks. Why has this happened to me? Why was my life this way? And then when I started going through to a lot of therapy and personal development, it was like, hey, you got to take ownership, even though it wasn't your fault. You have to realize that your dad and your mom did the best they could with what they knew, but what they knew was limited. And then I started just learning more about their upbringings and like realized they were real messed up too. Like my dad's dad was murdered at gunpoint when my dad was 12. So he had a lot of trauma and he had an abandonment issue. And I'm like, oh, no wonder he was very intimate and loving and vulnerable and wasn't present. Cause like how do you be present for your kids when you never had that yourself?
Yeah.
Right. And so it was just this whole aspect of like forgiving my dad and not holding any resentment, any anger, any sadness. And now realizing that he actually was the perfect father because he would, cheat on my mom, which caused a lot of pain. And I saw that growing up. So now I'm like the most loyal person I could ever be to my wife. I got to experience how challenging it was for us, but even my other half brothers who have different moms, because he lived with us, and they lived on the other block, but he would never see them. So when he died, he owed like hundreds of thousands of dollars in child support. He wouldn't see them. So now I get to be the father that I didn't get to have. So it's like all those things that I got to experience. Now it's like, man, that was a blessing because I got to experience the dark side of it so that now I can be the exact opposite.
Yeah, I got to give it to you because it takes a lot to break that like generational curse, as they may say,
Yeah, I think it's. I'm always curious where it comes from, but it is. I want to say like probably one of like the peak, one of the peaks of like a healthy mind, when all of the experience, like you said, that's out of your control in your life, you look at it and instead of using it as an excuse for your own life, for your own failures, but rather you see it as a perfect example of what not to be.
Right.
And that is like I said, the epitome of a healthy mind. And I'm curious, is that something that is that self-reflection that came after the therapy, or was that something you kind of spotted growing up?
No, it came during the therapy because I think most of us were not aware, right? Or sometimes we experience a lot of challenges or really dark stuff. And it's so painful that we try to forget it. And then sometimes we do, or we like bury it. And we don't even realize that it might still be impacting us like subconsciously in our own relationships and business and in life or in health and everything. So when I started doing a lot of therapy, all these things started coming. It's like, did you ever ask yourself why you don't believe in marriage? There was a point where I didn't believe in marriage. And my wife, luckily she stuck around. But there was at one point, there was a lot of friction because in her family, everyone gets married. And in my family, it's like no one got married. So it was like, it's just a piece of paper. And, I was one of those guys, right? And then when I started going through therapy, all that changed.
Awesome. What do you think was the most eye-reflecting question in your life that allowed you to open up a lot of possibilities that you didn't have before?
Reflecting what?
Like question, because like I do a lot of this like kind of self-reflection myself. Sure. Do you feel like through therapy, for everybody that's watching, like that there was like one question that you got asked that helped you kind of really see things differently? Yeah,
and just to clarify, it wasn't necessarily like I guess your traditional therapy. There's a company in LA called MITT. It stands for Mastery and Transformational Training, and it's all emotional intelligence and transformational training. So it's therapy in a very in a way where you're doing these exercises where you're able to like reflect and often re-experience your traumas so that you could make peace and completely change your perspective.
Is this like a program or something that you take?
It's like a 4-month program. That's what it is, right?
That's pretty cool.
But there was a pivotal moment, a pivotal moment in the basic training where the trainer, he asked a question and then I stood up and I said, well, I feel like who I am is getting in the way of who I want to become. Sounds pretty logical, right? Then he says, actually, Jorge, he says, who you have become is getting in the way of who you've always been. Who you have become is getting in the way of who you've always been, right? And every time I said that, I get the chills. So he went on to explain that. He said, when you were 3, and there's like 200 people in the room, he's like, when you guys were 3 years old, what did you have that you don't have now? People are throwing out all these words. And then he said, no, it was freedom. And I know, right? Because I got a 1 and a 4-year-old. And like, not when they want to try stuff, like today we were at the little park and my 1-year-old is just trying to go down the slide. She wants to jump off. Like there's no previous history of like, oh, what are people going to think about me, or self judgment or self sabotage. She has complete freedom. But then, what happens, right, in your upbringing? A parent passes away, someone has an abuse, physical, mental, emotional, some type of abuse, or trauma, or heartbreak, whatever it is, and then we create stories and we become victim to those experiences, and then that kind of leads us right to where we are sitting in that room with a lot of people just having a lot of unresolved trauma. So that question was really powerful because it made me think like, wow, how was I before? What happened in between? And what is my life now as a reflection of all this unresolved trauma?
You ever taken Landmark?
This is like Landmark,
Similar?
but people that have taken both have told me that Landmark is more mental and MITT is more like from the heart. It's more emotional.
Huh? Yeah, because Landmark is just 3-4 days, I think.
Yeah.
When I took it.
Well, I think they're similar in the program structures where like MITT has a 3-day basic, a 5-day advanced course, and then a 4-month leadership program.
Is it like affordable for like anybody to kind of get into?
It is.
Or?
It's definitely way like, I personally have invested like hundreds of thousands over the years to all these crazy masterminds, and that was by far the most affordable.
Interesting. So speaking of that, I want to get into that. Do you think masterminds are worth the investment, man?
That's a good question. Last year I joined way too many masterminds.
Yeah. No, because I feel like it gets to a point where like you just end up like meeting the same people. Like it's the same people spending the same money.
Yeah, I could see both perspectives. I feel like I got to experience both sides last year because I joined 4 masterminds. And one, it was way too much information for me to really implement. It was like, it's like saying, oh, well, you should start a real estate business. You're like, no, you should start a laundromat business. Well, pandemic or not, people are going to need to wash their clothes. You might be like, bro, hummus is where it's at. Like, you could be like, I don't know, like 1 billion people eat hummus. I don't know, whatever it is, right? And so you go to all these masterminds and like everyone's right. You could make money so many different ways or impact lives so many different ways. But I feel that masterminds are valuable, but I recommend people to like join one and just go all in on that for like 6 to 12 months and don't diverge. Don't try to catch 2 rabbits at once because you'll catch neither. That's what I did last year.
Do you have a favorite?
A favorite mastermind? I would say I did a program last year. Well, I just finished a few weeks ago. It's called Category Kings with Russell Brunson.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a bunch of online entrepreneurs that are doing, multiple 7 to multiple 8 figures.
Yeah, I know, because like you guys like you spend big money on that stuff. That's
Yeah.
why. Because like I always got myself into mastermind through just like the podcast and relationships. Yeah. I've spent money on coaching, but definitely like I meet some people and they're like, oh yeah, this year I'm like 200K in, and I'm like, yeah, that's not me. Like, yeah, that's a lot. That's a decent amount of dough towards it.
Yeah.
Did you so 4 masterminds? What were the 4 last year?
So it was the Category Kings one. I also did Roland Frazier. He has a company called Epic Boardroom, and it has to do with M&A, mergers and acquisitions, and consulting for equity. Like if you have a company and you're like, hey, can you teach me how to get it from 7 to 8 figures? Instead of charging you one time, you offer me equity in exchange, and then we grow it together. It's that type of structure. And that one's really dope just because you'll never see business the same way. Or when you meet entrepreneurs somewhere, you always think of like, wow, can I help this person? Is this in my zone of genius? And that's how a lot of people become billionaires, right? They buy, multiply, and exit businesses, or they buy a bunch of, 10 dental practices, do a roll up, go public, and then sell it. So this guy teaches all of that. So that one was pretty dope. I'm still in that one. I think we finished in January. That was the last one I joined. And then there's a gentleman named Myron Golden.
Yeah, I've heard of that name.
He's really dope. It's like mindset, but a lot of strategies. Like he specializes on teaching you how to do 5-day challenges. Like Carlton, he's in a 5-day challenge right now. He's got over 500 people there. And these people will do like $1 million to $5 million in like a couple weeks. Wow. With these 5-day challenges. It's just a way to get people online, and then you offer a high ticket opportunity at the end of the 5 days, and he teaches you how to do that.
That's pretty sick. So like, what are the future goals for you? Is this like, is real estate the long term thing? Are you gonna buy and sell businesses, like you mentioned? Like,
I would say those three things. I would say the main things is real estate and the coaching. Coaching has always been something that I love doing. I love making an impact in other people's lives and teaching them, just everything I've learned from my mentors as well. So coaching and investing in real estate are going to be like the main things.
So Jorge, I had a question. So when you were talking about like the one specifically where like the person's able to like get equity, and then you start thinking to yourself, how can I benefit someone of that has money or something, just people in general? So say if like you're a person in their early 20s, or just a person in general, and they come across a person of wealth, but they're trying to think to themselves, how can I bring value to this one person? It not without it being monetarily, right? Because that's typically what we automatically just default to. Like value equals money, right? That's not necessarily the case. Now, and say if a person has something, but they want to bring value to a person, right? Of substance, of influence, of money, and so on and so forth. How would you advise the viewers on like a way to bring value to a person, as opposed to just being a complete mooch?
Yeah. So somebody that wants to get started, for example, they want to get started in real estate, and they approach someone who's very successful, and how can they work with them and not necessarily pay for mentorship, but just offer value?
I'd say yes. And then also, I guess that's it.
I would say, figuring out what that entrepreneur needs. So if that entrepreneur, for example, when I had my dance business, we used to put a lot of flyers on cars. We'd go to other nightclubs who had our community, and we'd put flyers on like a couple hundred cars. So like if someone approached me and said, hey, how about I put flyers for you, 2-3 days a week, in exchange you teach me how to, XYZ, that could be a great way to offer value in exchange for additional value.
So in a way, like barter, like
Pretty
you're
much,
exchanging your time for
become their assistant, in some shape or form, without getting paid, just like sort of like an intern, just to like learn from that person, to surround yourself with them.
Yeah, because I know like many times when people come across people who are just like multi-millionaires, just they're where almost like you want to be when you grow up, right? Or like as like a young person. Sometimes a person talks themselves out of it, of like actually getting to know the person, or getting to, because you're like, what kind of value am I going to bring? Do I kind of, and this is where you start talking yourself out of it. Do I feel like I'm using the person? Does the person feel like I'm using them, or I'm trying to use them, right? In that case, you're trying to like give them something in exchange for the knowledge and all that experience that you're going to be getting from them. So I definitely agree with the whole thing. One thing I did recently, because my friend and I we were having a conversation at my house, and we were just chatting it up. And he was like, he's around a lot of wealthy people. One person he's around constantly is the owner of Wish, that app, right?
No owner of what? Wish?
Wish. Oh,
Wish.
the Wish app.
Oh, Wish app.
The
Oh,
Wish
okay.
app,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
The guy's balling, right? But my friend's not. So I was telling him, I was like, well, try to leverage yourself. Like you're doing like you're helping them out like here and there, but you're always in that sphere of influence, right? So they know you by name. Why can't you somehow benefit from that group? He was like, I'm just a pawn. And pawns only move one direction. I'm like, okay, well, if eventually, since we're using that analogy of chess, if a pawn moves up so many spaces, eventually that pawn could choose whatever he wants to be, right? A bishop, a horse, you know what I'm saying? Like, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I was telling him, like, you don't necessarily have to bring value to another person from monetary perspective, right? I said, for example, something I recently did was one guy who I look up to, and I know is a very successful individual down in Huntington Beach. We chatted it up. I went to his office after not talking to him for like 8-9 months, and I randomly just texted him. I was like, hey, bro, hope everything's fine. My bad, I've been MIA. I'm going to stop by the office like on Thursday. Is that cool? He's like, yeah. We chatted up, blah, 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 blah. The next day, because he was like, so what are you up to? I was like, well, I sell hummus with the family and blah, 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 blah. He's like, oh, dude, I love hummus. I'm like, oh, that's cool. We stopped talking about hummus. We just chatted up about life and this and that. The next day I texted him. I was like, hey, I'm on my way. Do you like spicy? He's like, yeah, I love spicy. Why? I'm like, I just dropped off at your desk a couple of stuff. Enjoy. I don't want anything for it. Just have fun, man. He's like, dude, thank you so much. Blah. And I just drove off, right? I feel like something like that is a means that I personally did, at least for me to add value and also appreciation to a person, right? Where it didn't really cost me much money out of my pocket, but I'm pretty sure it was a very kind gesture to the person. It was very relevant because, we just talked about it.
Yeah.
So like, I feel like it's very important to listen, to be an active listener. So with that analogy of my friend who thinks that he's a pawn, right? And how would you suggest a way of him to level up in the eyes of his sphere of influence, and how to somehow leverage himself to become an asset to these people?
Yeah, I would say, like ask, believe, receive, right? So if you don't ask, then the answer will always be no. And that's probably what he's thinking of himself because of, memory storages, experiences.
I hated when he said that, by the way.
Experienced,
I hated
right?
it. I hated it.
And that person might be looking for someone just like him right now, but he limited his ability to create that connection or relationship just because of his own self-sabotage. So I would say, hey, just go and do it anyway. Like in that MIT training, they always say like, oh, what the fuck, do whatever it takes, or just do it anyway, right? It's just like, just do it. Don't even think about it. I think, was it Ty Lopez or someone recently said that the hardest work we do is thinking. So he's probably thinking, overanalyzing why it's not going to work. And it's like, dude, just do it. Less thinking, more doing. Just that whole analysis paralysis thing. Because him holding back there means he's holding back in other areas of his life too. How you do anything is how you do everything.
That's funny. The hardest work is thinking. That's crazy. That's absolutely mind blowing. And it always kind of throws me back to somebody who I look up to as a mentor. The only reason why I was able to find him in my life at some point or another is because of my story. I used to be a personal trainer. And it was one of those things where the assistant manager challenged me and another trainer. Like, go get into a workout right now and blah, 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 whatever. You'll be rewarded with something. And the moment I walked out of like that desk area, I was like, I don't care. The first person I see, I'm going to talk to. And then here comes crossing me is like this, tall, strong built guy, this and that. And immediately my mind was just like, nah, not him. But then I told myself, I was like, no, I promised myself the very next person I see, I'm going to talk to.
Yeah.
So I stopped myself immediately dead in my tracks. And then I talked to him. And funny enough, I just texted him today. I was like, because he just bought a bunch of stuff from our company. And I just texted him today and I was like, I don't want to just see you as a customer. I've always held you in a high regard. And I would really like to, put in some effort into that mentorship relationship that's possibly there, He hasn't responded yet, but
no response is a response.
I thought there was like a story that he got ghosted.
No.
He got ghosted. Guys, do not follow Bibi's advice. It's terrible.
Roger, text me back.
Here's what not to do.
No. I'll
It's hilarious, dude.
You're freaking losers,
bro.
You're a loser, bro.
You got to drop off some hummus.
Yeah, that's what it is.
That's what you're missing, bro.
Bro, he gets it, bro.
No. I'll see him eventually because I still need to drop. I drop off the stuff that he bought from us, which is like a bunch of honey.
Hey,
and
why don't you
olive
reply
oil.
back to me, cuz?
No, he has a lot of respect for me, and
Apparently.
Are you sure?
So the thing is,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You should double check, bro.
so
You
he
should
has no
text him
respect
again.
for me.
Hey, you there?
Yeah, you there? Question mark.
You
Are
up?
okay?
Yo, you up?
Is it me?
Is Is it my hair? No, but one thing I wanted to touch upon with your idea, which is kind of like a bit of a kiss up idea, to be honest. But
A kiss up idea.
what I like about your idea is the way you mentioned it. It's kind of like a kind gesture. I think what, especially, for men who have some degree of, status or whatever, when that gesture is in the form of respect, I think that definitely opens up that door for opportunity.
You know what's hilarious? You know how you just said, like, the hardest work we do is thinking? You guys are overthinking the hell out of this. like from my perspective, like, I've always been like the guy who just like asks straight up. And if I get a no, I get a no. Okay. And like usually, like, I follow up with a question of like, is there anybody you can connect me with who can fulfill that request?
I just don't think.
Adam, do you want a cookie, bro?
Dude, I do. We've been talking about chess and yeah, please. I'm actually pretty hungry.
If you're hungry, I'll tell you what. There's definitely more than 1 billion people in the world who eat hummus. There's easily over 1 billion.
That's
great,
hilarious.
man.
But switching up the subject, so I know you're married and you have kids.
That's right.
Right? So, like, I'm curious because I just recently got married, man. So I'm asking this selfishly.
Congrats.
Yeah. Thank you so much. How the fudge do you balance everything? And do you... So I know you said you probably spend like 1 hour a week on the Airbnb side of things, but I know you're coaching. I've ran coaching programs. That stuff takes a while.
Yeah, it takes a while.
Yeah, it takes a lot of your time. So, like, is there certain things that you follow that are like non-negotiables in your life to allow you to have a healthy marriage?
Yeah, man. There's a lot here. One thing that really helped is that my wife went through that same program. Right.
Right.
So
The
she
MIT?
Yeah, so I went, and then the following month she went, so we were able to individually work on each of our, shit that we all needed to kind of leave behind to move forward. I would say another thing that's been really helpful is like, so she used to be a law enforcement officer. Funny, because she used to work for immigration. And it's funny because we used to cross people across the border. So she used to catch those people that used to do the things that we used to do.
Is that you guys met?
Is that is that like a
Did you get caught, bro?
a twist on Romeo and Juliet story?
Oh, no, that's a Lil Wayne song, Mrs. Officer. Lil Wayne song, Mrs. Officer, bro. Come on, dude. Please tell me you guys don't get it. You know what's up? You know what's up?
We actually met dancing bachata like back in like 2009.
In one of your clubs.
Yeah, at the club.
That's flipping lit.
Yeah, long story short, in 2018, we had just got pregnant. And because it was a federal job that she had, she would work. She was like 15 minutes before she would get out of her shift. And they would say like, hey, Stephanie, you got to stay for another 8 hours. And there was nothing that she could do about it. So she was working 16-hour shifts on the border of TJ. And then she had an apartment there, but then she would drive to my place in LA. So it was really crazy.
Wow.
And we didn't want her to keep having to work those 16-hour shifts. So we set up a game plan to basically be able to replace her 9 to 5. And that's how we got into the subleasing part of Airbnbs, because getting a couple subleases, we replaced her 6-figure career. And that's how she got out of, her rat race. But the reason I brought that up is, at least in my culture, when the man works and is the provider, the wife now feels all the pressure to do all the cooking, cleaning, laundry, full time. And I remember telling her, I was like, babe, give me about another year. And in about a year, none of us are going to have to do this. So I just kind of focus on getting more properties, growing the coaching business. And 3 years ago, we hired like a full-time house manager. So that's what I call her. I don't really know what the title is, but she does cooking, cleaning, laundry, iron, helps with the girls. And it basically has bought us like 40 hours of time, of hours of stuff that we used to do. Now, like I always say, if it's not a meaningful experience or an income producing activity, I don't want to do it. So a lot of those things that we used to do, like cooking and cleaning and laundry every day, every week, those are like lower per hour activities that we were able to hire out so that we could focus on more meaningful experiences, more family time, and more higher income producing activities.
So basically get your money right.
Yeah.
Yeah, get your money right, guys.
And so that, that's helped because now my wife homeschools our 4-year-old.
Yeah.
And so she's able to spend more time with them rather than having to do everything else in the household to, keep the house together.
This is a prime example of money definitely buys happiness. Prime example.
So I always say, people ask me, yo, how is your wife involved in the business? Like, how does that work? I always say, hey, she's the CEO of the house and I run the businesses.
Yeah,
like
totally.
that.
So, but like, I'm curious in terms of like scheduling time out. So like, do you work every day or do you have days where you're like,
Yeah.
I'm just going to take off? Like,
Yeah. Fridays are like my heaviest days are like Monday, then Tuesday, then Wednesday, then Thursday. Friday is super light. And then on the weekends, I mean, I don't, typically work, but Fridays are like laid back. And I definitely schedule. So if it's not on my calendar, it's not happening, right? So like this podcast was on my calendar. 3 days a week, I have it on my calendar to like go out in the front yard and play soccer with my 1-year-old and my 4-year-old. And then it happens.
on your calendar for
It's
that.
on my calendar.
Oh, that's cool.
Like if
Yeah,
everything,
yeah.
personal, even my workouts, hit the sauna, the cold plunge.
You got to show me that calendar because how the hell do you keep up? I've tried that, but I find it so hard to like have because you do a lot of things throughout the day.
Yeah,
know?
everything, even like
Is there
take
like
my-
a system you follow?
No, I just put it on the calendar. Like take my vitamins in the morning, it's on the calendar. Put them, in the evening, they're there. And then once I do it, I just delete it, and that's how I know. And anything I don't finish, I usually add it to the next day. But this is how I ensure that like nothing slips. Right?
How often do you update this calendar?
It's on a daily.
It's on the
like
daily.
this calendar is like an extension of my life. Like it's just every day. If you were to say, "Hey, let's go golfing next Monday," I'd be like, "Oh, cool! Like what time and where?" And then I put it in my calendar. We'll send you a calendar invite, and like it's done. If my wife like last week she wanted to go to this like an arts class just to have time to herself, I was like, "Cool! Like what day?" She's like, "Oh, Monday at 6." I'm like, "Great, Monday at 6." And now I know that I'm gonna be home with the girls while she goes to her class. But like everything goes on the calendar.
That's pretty sweet. Because like I asked that because like my calendar because I've tested and tried a lot of different formats. One of the formats some formats like I have like some entrepreneur friends who, Mondays and Fridays are like high level work days, and then Tuesday, Wednesdays, Thursdays is when they get their meetings done. Some entrepreneur friends I've heard of like systems where like. Some even take Mondays and Fridays off. Excuse me. And some people, like I've heard of the methodology of not packing your calendar too much and allowing some flexibility in there. So you literally like task by task by task have that set up. So it's not like a task list. It's all on your calendar.
It's on my calendar. Yeah. I like it that way because if you were to say like, yo, let's film part 2. This was great in 30 days. I'd be like, oh, let me check. Oh, dude, I'm going to be out of town. It's just everything fits there. Or if I have, I don't know, my daughter's, dance performance, like I know that I can't. It's just everything goes on the calendar.
That's freaking rad. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
So hold on. Have you ever read the book 4-Hour Work Week?
Yeah.
You have.
Yeah.
So how much of what you currently do or what your operations look like, how much of that do you leverage
In my business?
in your businesses?
Relevant to the 4-hour work week or just in general?
Because I know the pretty much like one of the summaries of like the 4-hour work week is understanding leverage.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, there's a lot of leverage.
Yeah.
This is why we hired, her name's Maritza, right? Now we got 40 hours back of all these tedious but necessary tasks. But I do that with everything, right? I have an assistant. If like next week we're going to the Bahamas to speak at Ken McElroy's, we're gonna go speak at his mastermind. So I'll tell my assistant like, hey, book this flight, book this hotel, make sure I'm vegan, so I'll be like, make sure they got vegan food, make sure they got this. So I'm like, leverage is my middle name. I definitely leverage just everything I possibly can, 100%.
Even a lot of like the day-to-day operational stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I have the right team around me of, operators and people. I'm not a detailed perfectionist type of personality. I'm more the type of person to jump off a mountain and build an airplane on the way down. So I always got to surround myself with people that are super detailed, that are super organized, that are super structured, because like I'm not. So when I have my masterminds events, I have a team that will set it up. I get there and like I teach. Like that's what I do. I leverage everything and anything I possibly can. The only thing I don't leverage is obviously if it has to do with my wife or my kids, those things I'm like hands-on. But anything business, monetary-wise or scheduling-wise, it's all leveraged.
I mean, that's the thing though. I feel like based off what I'm hearing from you, you've had that mindset for quite a while. Because it is a way of thinking. There's not a lot of people that will go out there and go, oh, I'm going to go hire a house manager. Like,
right.
Which I personally totally believe in. I think that
Yeah.
answer is like something that I completely have had in mind. Told my wife that too. It's like, eventually within time, like I'm going to do that. I need to set that up because I think life should be a choice. in my opinion.
Yeah.
And like money buys you the freedom to have those choices.
Yeah,
you know?
it's interesting when that comes up when we started hiring someone, because like my mom, she doesn't speak English, so like growing up, other than all the illegal businesses we did, she would like clean houses and work at like factories. So she's like, mijo, someone's cleaning your house? She's like, how come you guys aren't cleaning the house? She's like, I'll go clean your house, you know? And she's like, someone's cooking for you? Someone's doing laundry? Like, she couldn't understand the concept of why we would pay someone how much are you paying her? So there's a lot of scarcity in regards to the subject of money. It's like, you know, when I go to my mom's house, the lights are off. The AC is off, even if it's 95 degrees inside the house.
To save money, yeah.
And on my wife's side, her mom too, she was like, oh, like you guys hired someone, they're gonna do all this for you. Like, oh wow, this is not normal. Like in the Latino culture, it's not you do your own stuff. You don't hire it out. So we had to. It's like, hey, you got to live your life. You have your beliefs. Like, this is the way we're living our life, and we had to. You know, at first there was a little bit of friction, but now everyone got used to it.
I can definitely tell that you're not that traditional when it comes down to certain things. I mean, dude, one, you hired like a nanny or like the house manager. Second, you're Latino and you're freaking vegan, bro. What the heck?
I know, right?
What's going on here?
Yeah, we just I don't know, man. Everything that we do, we just call it life by design. Like, we don't follow a lot of sometimes we live our lives in a certain way because our parents did it, and then when you ask them why they did it, they're like, well, your grandma did it and their parents did it, and it's like everyone's just repeating the process. So we just decided to just start from scratch.
That's funny, dude. My mom would have the exact same reaction. Because like even now, like it's just like, even if it's like a once a week thing, she's like, how am I going to allow a stranger into my house to clean my house? Like, it's just like, what if they take something? It's like, well, calm down, dude. Like, that's their job. Not to take stuff, but
to steal. No, man, I appreciate the insights heavy, because I think a lot of people can definitely take a lesson from this, because scared money don't make money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's one of those things where investing into resources like that will allow you to kind of like free up. Also, I think it's huge as an entrepreneur, especially a guy in your position, to be able to have the freedom to like think, you know, and not overthink things, you know. And
well, again, when you delegate all these, like, for example, you know, would you agree like cleaning your house is super important, right? Otherwise,
Sure.
it's gonna smell. You're gonna build up mold. Like, it's just not gonna be a good environment. But it's so tedious.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's not. It's just, it's important, but it's tedious. Like, just hire it out. And you know, kind of going back to your question, right, with what helps having a great marriage with my wife is, like, we would have these conversations, and I would say, like, hey, what are some of the things that you don't want to do? You know, let's make a list of that. Like, because I would do the dishes, and I'm like a germaphobe, so I would wash my hands, you know, wash everything like 3-4 times. That's just how I've always been that way, even before COVID. And like, my hands would get so dry, and like, you know, kind of going back to the dance business, part of why I also got out is because I had a back surgery in 2012, and the doctor said it was a 50-50 chance I'd ever walk again. So I started thinking, like, how do I make passive income? How do I make my money work for me? But long story short, when I stand up in the same place, in the same position for a long time, my back gets a little tight, you know? And so I would hate doing the dishes. So I'm like, all right, I don't want to do dishes. I know I got to do it for the next, you know, while until we hire this out. But I was like, hey, babe, make a list of all the things that you don't want to do. And I feel like that was also really powerful for our marriage, because sometimes we do things because we have to, not because we want to.
Yeah, true. I mean, you have a lot of life responsibilities. I mean, like, I've seen it with my own parents growing up. Like, my dad, like, would be stressed out all week, and then over the weekend, he's stressing the hell out because he's painting the walls. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
I remember as a kid, I'd make fun of him. I'd be like, what are you doing? Like, aren't you already overwhelmed? And he would always tell me, oh, you don't understand. Once you're an adult, you're going to get it because you have to save money. And in my head, I'm like, but I still don't get it. Like, you know, I am, you know, still trying to figure things out in life, but I'm still, you know, I'm still not on that mindset. Like, I'm more on like the mindset of like, if you can afford it, definitely leverage it. And if you can't afford it, then get your money right.
Right.
You know?
So do you see marriage as kind of like a almost like developing a team?
It is.
So was there any part of I mean, I guess, you know, it's different when, you know, you do have the liberty to afford it, to just have someone take care of all the chores and whatnot. But is there any part of you that almost has an issue where it's like, hey, this is the effort that I'm putting in to this team, and it's almost as if like you expect a balance or not really.
That's a good question. Do I expect a balance?
At least like almost like an equal amount of effort being put in.
For
it's
sure.
not necessarily on like the finances side, but like everything else.
Yeah, it's definitely, sometimes people say like marriage is like 50-50, but I believe it's like 100-100, not 50-50. But the other part is that, it's interesting, again, how you do anything is how you do everything. So I do this in my marriage, and I also do this with like my two business partners. And that's never question like how much they're contributing. Like always assume that they're doing the best they can at any given time. Because if I would start to question like, oh, was she doing this? Is she not doing that? Then it starts to create like friction. But like her results prove it, like for example, like in the morning she gets up and she's like already doing letters and doing numbers with my 4-year-old, teaching motor skills to like my 1-year-old, And she does oversee like the tax and legal department, because when all the mail comes in and the IRS says, hey, you owe $6,000 because of property tax, like she's there and she's like, oh, babe, which card should I use? And like she just handles everything. But I've never had a reason for me to ever question if there was an imbalance, because I just feel like it's always been balanced. But that also has to do with knowing our vision, our core values. Like we have core values like in our marriage and as a family. And yeah, I've just never felt the reason to, question if there was like an imbalance.
So how early on into the marriage that you guys basically waited until you guys had that conversation of values and core values and what kind of vision do we want? Because it's very easy to tell. I could tell you what vision I want in my life.
Yeah.
And your partner may have two separate.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So like, how long did it take within the marriage or just a relationship in general until you guys actually moved together as a unit towards a single shared goal?
Now, it was definitely more of like a process. Like we've been together for 11 years, but we've been married for 6 years. And around the time of when we got engaged, I remember we were traveling somewhere and she had bought this book. It was like a relationship book, and it was about all these sweaty palm conversations that you should have with your significant other, like before getting married. And it was like, which are you going to be religious? And if you are, like, what are, are you in alignment? Are your kids going to go to school, or do you want them to be entrepreneurs, or are you going to let them choose? It was just like all these random questions that are super important, where if you don't address these conversations, there could be a lot of friction because you don't believe in the same things. Mm-hmm. And we just hashed out all these conversations and we're like, all right, cool, we're on the same page about all these things, like, or created a happy medium, but it's just been a process. It wasn't like, oh, it was February of, 1st of 2017, a pivotal moment. It was just an ongoing conversation, and still an ongoing conversation like today. Over the course of many years.
It's a consistent thing that you always
What's the name of the book?
Oh, man. I don't even know. I don't remember.
Figure that one out.
But there's a lot of books, right? Like the 5 Love Languages. You guys are all familiar with that one, right? That's like a good book. But even the 4 Agreements is like a really good book that just a lot of values of, life.
The 4 Agreements, right?
4 Agreements.
Yeah. I heard it's
like,
good.
That's a good book too. So we read a lot of books that had to do with just personal growth. And we just, became in alignment.
Sweet. Well, Jorge, I appreciate you for hopping on, my man. I'm curious, like, where can people find you if they look you up on social media?
Yeah, it's Instagram is probably the best place, and it's THE, so and then my name, Jorge Contreras.
Nice. How do you spell the last name?
Yeah, CONTRERAS.
Sweet. Oh, I appreciate you a lot for hopping on, man. It's definitely I loved sitting with you because, like, I feel like you're what they say, like, you're kind of like on a momentum. And you could tell with your energy, you're kind of just on the move. So I definitely appreciate you for making some time for this.
Appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, it's good
Thank
meeting
you.
you.
Likewise.
Yeah, pleasure.
Thank you, brother.
This thing got stuck. The mic. Awkward. So let's reshoot this here. Pleasure for coming on. No, but seriously, hey guys, thank you so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed, please remember to leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. All right? Peace.
Peace.